Hi, everyone. My name is Gurinder Singh. I'm a senior PM at Salesforce. I'm excited to be here. And today I'm going to talk about building data products for internal business users. We all know there are tons of data products out there. And if you were to go to, let's say, LinkedIn or other career site, you'll see that the product management discipline is really spread across multiple areas within an organization. It could be in a realm of infrastructure. You need technical product managers. It could be your classic product managers, external facing, and it could be internal facing product managers for business users, for building products for business users. I've had experience in building data products for both internal and external use cases, internal and external users. Today, I'm going to talk about that, my experience, and hopefully, get to share my learnings with you all out there. We can talk about data products. We can talk about what is the difference between external versus internal, or if there is any. If you are working in one of the areas for building data products for internal business users, how you can be, how can you set up yourself and the team for success, and how should you really think about data as an asset, and what is kind of the mindset, what I call data when mindset that you need. And then we can talk about evangelize and impact categories. So with that, let's get started. So before that, a little bit about myself. My name is Gurinder Singh. Currently, I'm a senior PM at Tableau, a Salesforce company. Born and brought up in India, moved to US for my grad school. Long time back. Went to UB, University at Buffalo, New York. Went to business school at Berkeley, Haas. And from a professional point of view, I have worked at a number of companies, mostly tech startups in the early phase of my professional journey. Companies like Snowcap, which was more on the music tech side, Kiptronic ad tech side, more on the B2C domain, and then moved to the B2B, more of a SaaS platform companies like Burst, Salesforce, Tableau, which is also a Salesforce company. Hobbies, if you are interested in knowing that, um, I like running, so I have a couple of marathons under my belt. Cool 50K, which is I guess a 30 miler, and then tons of half marathons. I delve into photography now and then, and loves reading books. Me and my wife, we live in a Bay Area. We love to foster dogs. Some of the ones that you are seeing here, they're all happily adopted. What you see are Bo, Coco, and Lulu. So we love them and we love fostering dogs. My personal philosophy, whether it's life or more so in the professional aspect, be authentic. Um, Life is too short to be somebody else. So why waste time? Why waste time being somebody else? Be authentic. Perpetual learner, especially in the day and age of technology innovation and things moving fast. It's always good to be on the forefront of technology and always be learning. Student always. And as you're creating connections, think about meaningful connections. I always try to, breadth is good, but I always try to focus more on the quality of the connections, both in my professional and personal life. On the working front, my frameworks, I call it 3E frameworks. First is empathy. Lead with empathy, whether it's your users, whether it's your execution team or the technical team you're working with, whether it's cross-functional teams, sales team, pre-sales, marketing, and so on and so forth. Lead with empathy. Focus on execution. You could have an awesome write-up of a product vision, product document. You could have an even better slide deck, but the delight comes from an actual product. So focus on the execution as you're building the products, and empower users, empower other teams that you work with, so that overall it's you're improving the pie, you're increasing the pie, and everything is a value add for folks out there. So with tons of stuff about me, I guess I love to talk about myself, if nothing else. So let's get started. Let's go to the next slide. Data products. You've probably seen data products in action. You probably use them day in, day out. So what are data products? Let's talk about the definition of data products. The products which are fueled by data to solve user needs. The products that use data as an asset to facilitate the end goal. The data products. Some of the ones that I use almost daily, day in, day out, Google. I'm sure a lot of you, or maybe all of you, use Google every day, or multiple times a week, if not every day. And Amazon. These are the examples of the data products that we use. How about the internal data products? Well, internal data products could be one of the data products that I worked on was what I call customer health smart attrition predictor. For a B2B company, you have tremendous amount of data about the customers. Can you use them to leverage to build a data product which will help to figure out if a given customer is going to attrit, to renew, to grow. So there's kind of a customer health forecasting product. You could also think about customer insights data product. Give more and more insights about the customer so that you can proactively engage with them. Or if you're building data products for your support organizations, you can think about some kind of intelligent routing data products. So really, there are tons of examples out there for internal data products. And if you're working in like bigger organizations, I'm sure a lot of you can relate to some of these items. So let's go to the next one. Now, before we jump into data product management, one thing I always like to emphasize again and again: remember why you started. Remember whatever frameworks that you're used to in using product management, whether it's jobs to be done framework or certain other frameworks. Always have the product management hat. Data comes next. Do not forget what are the pain points that you're trying to solve. What are those use cases that you are going after? What are those personas that you're building this delightful experience for? Do not forget that. Always have the product management hat first and foremost. And then if you click one more time, and then think about how you can leverage the data to build those delightful products or delightful data products. Always, uh, always ensure that you have whatever you have learned, whatever your experience in your product management discipline, product management courses, in your professional life, have the order right. Do not let data in the prefix confuse you. So with that, let's go to the next one. Now let's think about and let's go through what are the differences between external and internal product management. And this is based on my experiences in B2C, B2B, working across both the areas. External, you're always thinking about external end users, external business users. It could be external developers that you're building the products about. Internal, needless to say, you're building for the internal business users. Next one, revenue focus. Whether you're talking about stickiness or adoption for building the external products, external facing products, you're always going to be thinking about the revenue, direct or indirect, as a goal. It is not the same case for internal data products. What I will qualify as a more of a cost focus rather than a revenue focus approach. This is important to keep in mind as you build your product vision, as you show the impact, as you raise the visibility. These things will dictate the kind of tactics that you need to do to make your product successful internally. Next one. And users and buyers. So in external facing products, you have users and your buyers. Buyers could be users, buyers could not be users, especially in B2B world. Buyers are seldom users. Whereas in the internal internal product, you have users, the ones that you are building the products for, the ones that you are building the products to make them successful. But then you have sponsors. Nobody's going to buy your product internally. But instead of buyers in the external facing world, you need sponsors. And these are exec level sponsors. We'll talk about that in a slide or two in a deeper depth. So let's continue. How do you ensure, if you are in one of those teams, if you are working in building an internal data product, how do you set up yourself for success and set up the team for success? And these are some lessons that I have learned in a hard way through my experience. The very first one is sponsor. As I mentioned in the previous slide, there is a buyer. Nobody is going to buy the internal product. But what you need is a sponsor. Sponsor I would qualify it as a single most important factor that can make or break your product story. that can dictate the success or failure of your product within an organization. Why? It'll because it is a signaling event in a way. So it signals the importance of what you're building throughout the organizations. In addition to that, as you kind of get down to tactics, it signals the importance in terms of how this product is going to be used by the different teams. It helps you to navigate through organization, and especially if you're working in a slightly bigger organization, this becomes even more critical. So do not shortchange that. In fact, in the beginning, we would do everything. We would build best features and functionalities for our data product. We'll do a lot of the guerrilla marketing, guerrilla tactics, enablement, and whatnot, building the content base. But a couple of times, our product didn't necessarily, I would qualify as a had a grand success because of this single important factor, sponsorship. Stakeholders. These are the stakeholders, the different teams and people you'll be working with. Business teams, of course, you're building your data products for the internal business users. So make sure you are hooked into the different business teams, and especially business teams doesn't necessarily mean only that those direct teams, but also the cross-functional teams where the users are interacting with. Program managers, and this is especially true for bigger organization, where program managers, they are managing programs as part of their roles, but they are also hooked into different teams. So make sure, if you have to go through different teams, if you can onboard a program manager, or if you can get a program manager in the resources list, that will be very helpful. And the last in this bucket is users and advocates, of course, the end users. But within the end users, look out for those vocal advocates. Look out for those people, who are always at the forefront of either knowing about your product or have strong opinions about your product. Bring them on board. Bring them into the initial design sessions. Bring them into the initial MVP discussions. Show them the prototype. Make sure they are on your side, because in an organization, especially in a big organization, the vocal advocates can really make things happen if they like your product. On the flip side, they can really make things happen in a negative way if they're very critical about your product. So make sure you have certain of those vocal advocates out there. And then, of course, execution teams. You will be working, building data products. So you'll be working with a lot of the teams across the data domain: data analyst, data engineering, data science, in addition to, of course, your classic design teams and some of the development teams. So make sure you have all of these things in mind as you're thinking about data products. Now, as you are building your data products or internal data products, some of the things that I want to share that you should keep in mind when you are thinking about the product vision, whether it's a 1 year product 1 year product strategy, 2 year product strategy, or a longer term planning of your product. Make sure you have these things at least highlighted there or referenced there. And if nothing else, think about these things. Crawl, walk, run, phases. Do not try to boil the oceans. Easier said than done. Data is very fun to work with. So when you start working with data, we really want to get to the run stage, but make sure you have the phases built in. And each phase has a specific milestone, and make sure that you have the checks and balances there. Set up for scale. What works for the first version, the second version might not work for the third version, because when you're talking about data, maybe you'll start with a small amount of data set, but as you kind of go through the multiple iterations, you might need tools for for the larger data set use cases. So make sure you're thinking about the scaling aspects also. Impact. Going back to the revenue focus versus cost focus, impact is the way you are going to show the visibility. You're going to evangelize the value add of your product. So make sure you have thought about how you're going to measure the impact. We have one slide about the impact. I'll cover that towards the end. Now, in this product, you're talking about data. Data is being used as a fuel to provide the impetus, to solving business problems. Now, when you talk about data, there's a lot of talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence. You can do all that, but make sure don't boil the ocean again. Don't jump to that immediately. Start small. Maybe the immediate value add that you can provide to your end users is through some insights. Uh, and the next is actionability. And maybe the intelligence or the machine learning, the our AI aspect comes later on. Make sure you have all these things thought through rather than jumping and saying, hey, let's build the best predictor for blah 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 blah. And later on you realize that it might have been good if we have gone through certain phases where we have say, okay, let's focus on data insights in phase one. Let's think about actionability, how we're going to make sure users can act on that on this you know on this data information, and then think about intelligence. So again, crawl, walk, run, kind of the same flavor, through the value of data as you're talking about that. And the last is personas. And this one is actually true in, I guess, business organizations, because you'll be surprised that as you're building it for um, a specific set of primary personas, there's always going to be secondary personas, I call it, that are going to get the value out of what you're building. So be on the lookout for the secondary persona, because that might dictate the fourth or the fifth, or some other data product, because at the end of the day, cross-functional organizations, teams are all kind of hooked to build for the success of the organizations, and make sure that what you're building is used by not only primary personas but other personas, if at all possible. Use case extensibility is just another fancy way of repeating the same thing. Look out for those other non-primary personas, which might give you um, much more uh, uh, much more leverage, not leverage necessarily, but which might give you the broader adoption, uh, 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 adoption foundation as you kind of thinking about the next phase of the data products. Let's go to the next one. Talking about data, you'll be delving into data. You might need to analyze the data. You might need to do some basic querying. So make sure you are, when you're talking about the building data products, you have certain basic knowledge of these different buckets. You Theoretical knowledge is fine. Hands-on knowledge in some of the areas is better, but make sure that you're aware of these things. So data engineering, I do sit with data engineers now and then to understand the data. That helps me in becoming a better product manager. Data science, I don't do hands-on, but at least at the theoretical level, the concept of modeling explainability and supervised learning, unsupervised learning, all the data science basics will come handy as you're kind of talking about talking with different teams. If nothing else, this will help you to understand what the execution teams are talking about, and this will also help you to uh, communicate the features and functionalities in a slightly detailed oriented manner with the right teams. And of course, consumption. It could be UI, UX, working with design teams, or if it doesn't have a visual component, you're going to be thinking about APIs. Now, again, a point of re-emphasis as you're going through this development cycle, execution mode, it becomes really fun to work with data. Make sure you do not forget why you started. Begin with end user in mind. As we kind of move through this journey, there is a tendency to kind of move far away from that. So make sure your job as a product manager is always to have that end user in mind, the destination in mind, whatever for the next milestone. So make sure you're aware of that. Next slide. Evangelize and be a multiplier. I would qualify this as a next important thing in the sponsor category. Uh, in addition to having a sponsor, exec level sponsor, I should say, you should focus on how you are going to evangelize your product. There's obviously a direct value, but there's also a perceived value. How are you going to make sure that perception is out there? that there's a high signal to noise ratio when people think about your product. How do you promote that? Now, these are some of the things that I have leveraged internally. I have found them to very successful. I've actually done sometimes on the exact opposite in the sense that a lot of the guerrilla tactics, as I mentioned before, which which does have an impact, but not so much if you leverage the communication opportunities at an organization level. This could be your internal marketing department if you are working in a slightly bigger organizations. This could be your internal events where you can speak about the product. This could be working with the different teams to build the case studies that you can use to communicate the value add. One thing I will emphasize here is that if possible, have other people talk about your product. Being a product manager, you'll always be excited about your product because there's a reason you're building that product. But it sends um, it sends a bigger, I would say, a value add to the users, to the company at hand, if somebody else speaks about the success of your product, how it has helped you. So even if you can't find people who can talk about it by themselves, you can bring them into your presentation, maybe have them cover a few slides, and you'll be surprised. This has a kind of a butterfly effect, and I've seen that working very well. So building product is one thing, getting a sponsor, exec level sponsorship, and uh, finding scalable ways to evangelize your product value is a whole other different ball game that you should always have your eyes on. This will be the last slide. We talked about revenue focus, cost per focus, and when we're talking about sharing the value add of our product, uh, surfacing that perceived value or that perception, there, how do you show the impact? You can show the impact through certain KPIs in different buckets, like productivity. Like one of the data products I worked in, it single-handedly um, cut down maybe 90% of the time for that for those jobs in hand, for the tasks in hand. And instead of like spending 30 or 20 hours in a month, they were spending maybe literally 1 hour now and then, just because of that specific data product I worked on. And you can if you multiply the number of hours saved with your average hourly rate, you're talking about some really good numbers if you have good adoption going on. And there could be some other impact KPIs that you could find in the efficiency bucket. Maybe that's where your product or data product is shining by using all that awesome data asset. So these are the few other things that I wanted to kind of cover with you. These are based on my learnings, both through building products for external users as well as internal users. Hopefully, you'll find some of these learnings useful for your roles and responsibilities. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for listening in, for tuning in, and good luck.